Welcome to the MSDW Podcast. I'm Jason Gumpert, editor at MSDynamicsWorld.com, and we're here for an update episode, I think we can call it. We talked back in May with AJ Ansari and Peter Wolf about the early signs of Microsoft's new cloud partner program and what it looked like from the SMB perspective, what it meant for partners going into a new recognition system, a new set of benefits, and all that required. Well, AJ and Peter are back. Hey, guys.
Howdy.
Hi, Jason. Hi, Peter.
Yeah, and thanks for coming back. We're here because, well, the Microsoft Cloud Partner Program is now, or MCPP is now has been launched. It's now scoring partners, right? But there's been some important changes, and that's really why we wanted to talk. Probably in relation to some of the concerns that you both raised back in May. Microsoft has made adjustments, right? And I thought we could start by talking a little bit about those. I know both of you have some pretty interesting observations about what the program in its current form really means for partners like yourselves.
Yeah, if you don't mind, I have a few thoughts that I want to share just at the top here, Jason. And to any of the partners that are tuning in here, I know I've heard through the channel a lot of partners that were discouraged by what they saw with the changes. And I think that the fact that they've changed these metrics here for us, it kind of shows that Microsoft's listening. And so the people that get discouraged out there need to not get discouraged. They need to join with IMCP, go on LinkedIn, and just constructively have your voice heard when these kind of things happen, because Microsoft is listening and they're trying to make things work for all of us. So I know that might be a little touchy-feely here, Jason, but I think it's important because I heard a lot of discouraged partners. And from what I'm seeing, Microsoft's listening, and I applaud their efforts to respond to channel feedback.
And Peter, I concur with that statement, right? I think when we were talking the last time, I brought up that even during the rollout of the previous model, the PCI model, the Partner Contribution Index, Partner Contribution Indicator, I forget exactly how that kind of was the full name, but we even then the first the first planned rollout didn't hit all the spots, and then I think as partners brought up their concerns, Microsoft went to the drawing board and made some changes, and I think for the most part, a lot of partners were a lot more satisfied with that, and I feel the same way here. I think for anybody who didn't listen to the May podcast, if you do go back and listen, I was critical, and I did also leave some hope that Microsoft would go back and readdress, and specifically to some of the things that we highlighted, right? One of the biggest things that was missing was, just identifying partners better in the business applications area as a SMB versus an enterprise partner, as opposed to large market, small market, where you had very little control in how you were classified. Just by going and addressing something as simple as that, I think they've made the measurement a lot more objective. This will never be to everybody's satisfaction. I can't say sitting here that this is entirely to my satisfaction, but I'm certainly satisfied that Microsoft has listened and they have adjusted the program to make it more reasonable. Perhaps there's room for a little more change, a little more growth, but we're certainly headed in the right direction here.
So the other thing that Microsoft did that was really listening to the partners is they extended the IURs, which was one of the most important benefits, and that was one of my primary concerns. As a partner who's out there hustling, we're running a lean, mean operation. And so to get those internal use rights benefits is huge. So thanks again to Microsoft for doing that. That was a big step in the right direction too. It was a class act. And they heard partners like me and others out there that were concerned about the new program and losing those benefits in such a short order before they had time to adjust their certifications and hit the metrics. So again, kudos to Microsoft. Microsoft is listening. And I know I already said it, but for the partners that are discouraged, just remember these things because, Microsoft has a lot of different audiences that they have to serve. And they're not going to always make everything perfect for each of us individually, but they are listening. And that's in my opinion, that's the essence of good customer service, right? And good partners is they listen to you. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, AJ.
Oh, I do. Well, what's really interesting here, Peter and Jason, is that little change just snuck up without ever registering on my radar. I first found out about this, I think around a month ago when we were in Seattle for IAMCP's, America's Board retreat. And we had the good fortune of having the opportunity to and meet with some of the folks who are part of this the Cloud Partner Program, and what they were thinking, and they kind of gave us a little bit of a peek preview, if you will, into the change that was coming, this particular change that we're talking about today. And in explaining that, they mentioned how that if you were, and this is also for the benefit of any partner who isn't quite familiar with what we're talking about here, if you achieved your gold or your silver partner designation, and but you weren't actually able to meet the required threshold for the solution partner designation, which is the new replacement for gold and silver and the other measuring metric, then they would allow you to receive the internal use rights related benefits that you achieved. And you could get this through 2023, and at the next cycle, simply by paying the fee that you used to, you would no longer be able to call yourself a gold or a silver partner. But again, you could once again continue to receive those same benefits. If you were silver at that last renewal before October 2022, then forever, at least or until the foreseeable future, you'd be able to continue renewing by paying, continuing to receive those internal use rights benefits. If you were gold at that point, that's what you're going to be locked into. But anytime in the future that you do start getting the 70 points that you need to kind of meet the threshold of a solution partner designation, then you could start working with the benefits that you are now entitled to in the new model. So this was a very interesting thing that Microsoft did. It seems like some partners knew about that fairly early. Some partners, like myself, didn't know about that at all. And I'm quite confident that there's a lot of partners out there who are hearing this for the first time as we talk about it. So,
I agree with that last statement. It's amazing. Again, the channel's so big. There's a lot of partners. I know this is going to shock you both, but like I talked to a partner the other day, didn't even know what NCE was. And I was like, how can you not know what NCE is? But the truth is the word takes a while to spread to all the different nooks and crannies of the channel. We're a big, massive organization.
Yeah. One other thing I want to add about internal use right licenses, and this was a place where sometimes tough love is needed. The representative, and I'm not going to name them because I'm not interested in really highlighting a person. It's a statement of philosophy that in some way I begrudgingly agree with. And that is, if your business relies on these internal use right licenses to run, you're missing the point of what they're for. I think that was a message from Microsoft to the partners, right? That this is more to help you get familiar with the tools, to use them for a demonstration and kind of readiness purpose, and not necessarily to rely on them to run your business. I know philosophically, a lot of partners see it a little bit differently, and for a long time we've just come to accept that that's what they're for. So every once in a while, when Microsoft or somebody representing Microsoft will say something like that, and you could either take that and get really mad about it, or you could say, well, at least we understand where they're coming from. What are these intended to be? What's a business purpose for these internal use rights licenses? And then over time, you can try to work to align or realign yourselves. My only critique in all of this, I think where we are today is that too frequently we get change in the partner program. I think we saw the PCI come out not too long ago. Now we've got the Cloud Partner Program. If I had one ask, it's that we continue to finesse and improve upon a program that is now being rolled out, as opposed to perhaps in a fiscal year or two getting yet another significant reboot of the partner program. I think that seems to that's happened a couple of times now in the last year or two. I did, I'm kind of going off a little bit longer here. When I asked this question about why did we go from PCI to CPP in such a short period of time, an interesting answer was presented to me, and that is PCI was only for business application partners. And I see everything as with my organization focusing on business applications, I see everything through that lens, not realizing a significant portion of Microsoft's partners were never affected by PCI because they didn't do biz apps. And so for them, this was the first major revamp in a very long time. So
it's really interesting. I didn't know that either. I thought PCI impacted all partners, but that's really fascinating.
Yeah.
No, I was going to say, though, just like kind of be devil's advocate a little bit. You're right. Thinking about PCI, that was a pretty decent change. And then now this is more of a major change to all the partners. I hope, like what you're saying, that we remain stable here. Like the big changes with NCE, the new purchasing experience and the partner changes, it's very disruptive to the channel, to Microsoft themselves, And I have to imagine it has an impact on sales for all of us because people are spending all their time learning about new programs and new initiatives. That takes away time from selling. Anytime we make sales more difficult or complicated, it slows it down. So I hope for all of our sake that we have some stability and there's just subtle tweaks and not massive changes going forward.
One of the things that concerned me initially with MCPP was it was initially announced by Rodney Clark, which made me think he was kind of spearheading it. I don't know if that was true or not. He then left the company, and when the new partner, chief partner officer was named and introduced to everyone, that was one of my first questions was, is this a program that she even, Nicole Deason, that she even wanted to bring forward? Is this really part of her vision for the channel? But I have to say, I don't see any signs that she's trying to change the direction at this point, or that she can. The program probably was fairly well, the planning for it was probably fairly well underway, but by the time she came aboard in this role, and it's live now, right? It's been launched. It's like you said, Peter. It would be, unthinkable to try to change course again.
I would say, Jason, that my general feeling is overall, I agree with the sentiment from Microsoft with both the PCI change and this change, because the old certifications weren't as relevant as they needed them to be and wanted them to be. The other thing is the world has changed where now customers, we got to measure value based on consumption and usage. So Microsoft has tried to balance both the PCI and these new scores with not just how much new business are you putting up or total business, but how much consumption is going on. And I think it was a necessary shift for Microsoft. If you look at like subscription recurring revenue models, one of the number one metrics is churn, and churn is closely tied to usage and consumption. And so it's, in my opinion, good for the health of all of us that Microsoft is now starting to reward based on consumption and usage, because what that is an ultimate indicator that the customers are happy with the licenses that are being sold to them and with the partners that are working with them. I don't want to sound like a cheerleader for Microsoft, but my own business is really heavily dependent on recurring revenue, and churn and consumption is what we focus on all day long. So I'm glad Microsoft has made these changes, but I do hope, to echo what AJ said, that this is it. Let's not change it again in 12 months, please.
Yeah.
For all of our sake.
Yeah. And I think, Peter, you've said some encouraging stuff, and you just said, you don't want to sound like the cheerleader, and I don't want to sound like the detractor. I think in reality, your opinion, your perspective and mine significantly overlaps. We're just coming at it from a different side. I will say one place where I think there's still room for improvement. And I think, Peter, you and I have both felt the burn. We talked about it in the last podcast. I think it would be a great improvement if Microsoft could start segregating the work that is done by one partner versus another within the same customer account. I think we both felt the burn when a client of ours, not a mutual client by any stretch, but in our case, we had a client that bought Business Central through us, or subscribed to Business Central through us. Also subscribed to Dynamics 365 CE through another partner. When they decided to move their 80-some CE licenses and go off to another solution, we were never part of the sale. But when they left, the decrease in license impacted us as well, even though we had. So I think that's one of those places where I think the tools are in place for Microsoft to be able to measure or separate which partner is working where, and perhaps even with GDAP, we will see, some opportunities there to see granularly which partners are, have what rights or maybe are involved with which applications. That would be a significant improvement, because that's one of those places where the baby can, and on occasion does get thrown out with the bathwater. And so I think those are those places. I think really for the new chief partner officer, I would say it's more about finessing this plan now. Then I don't know that there'd be much wisdom to scrapping this plan altogether. Not that I think anybody's at Microsoft's actively thinking about that, but room to finesse. But ultimately, it's a step in the right direction. I know, I think offline, on occasion, I think I can look at things a lot through the prism of everything that happens at DSWi. I can be a little more critical in the moment, but I realize Microsoft doesn't exist to do things just for my organization, right?
Oh, come on, AJ. That's not what I've heard.
Yeah. So when I look at it through that larger prism, I think I can be more objective and more realistic and realize, yes, some things don't cut the right way for us, but but I can see how this cake is being baked to the greater benefit of the community.
If you don't mind, I'm going to extend your thought there a little bit more, because that's another one I 100% agree with. The first ask, if Microsoft folks are listening, is please let's have a little stability so we can all, get back to the business of helping customers find the right solutions and helping them use those solutions, right? But the second would be, and AJ, I don't know if you know this, but like on the Azure side, people can already get differentiated on Azure versus Office. It's only on the business application side that we can't be kind of judged for our piece of the puzzle. And so like that's a big ask that I have is if, I do a lot of partner to partner work. A lot of times my partners are putting up the license numbers. I would like some ability to get recognized for that bit of business and only that bit of business. I have no control over their Azure consumption, their Office consumption, their Business Central. I'm just looking at the Dynamics 365 sales and customer engagement pieces. And so like it's one of those things I've been looking for honestly 4 or 5 years now. And, if the folks get this new program stabilized and they can start to look towards that, I would love to see that happen. That'd be a great win.
Yep. So Jason, Peter, what do you think we go into a little more like from qualitative to the quantitative side of things? I know before the podcast, we were talking about significant specific changes that were made in how, net customer adds are measured versus, how they used to be measured. Do you think that's a good idea to pivot there? Maybe talk a little bit, again, Peter, you're going first with perspectives. I'm fine with keeping it that way. And then I'll share some of mine as well.
Yeah,
I want to take this in a different direction. It's your podcast, right? Here I am.
I thought it was our podcast now, AJ.
That was actually what I was going to try to bring you both back to. Was some of those specifics? I'd love to hear which ones you think are the most interesting.
I will tell you, people have told me I'm infuriating at the high level because that's where I like to live. So I think AJ will probably be better at getting into each of the minutia. But I will say, if we're going to just go one by one, AJ, I'll just give my thoughts and then you can break them down into the specifics. But my thoughts is just overall, Microsoft has knocked it out of the park with the new metrics. The first one up is performance category, which is basically one measurement. It's net customer adds. You can get it's 0.75 points for a total of 20 customers, and you get 15 points across those customers. The one thing I don't know for sure, AJ, maybe you understand this, is next to the net customer adds, it says required 20. It does raise a little concern of mine, which is, does that mean if we don't have 20 or more, we have 0? Like, is it, because I don't think that should be the case, but is that how it's being calculated? Do you know?
No, just looking at our own performance score, it looks like they're prorating it. I think
that's what I thought.
20 to hit the max of 15 points, right? And for anybody that this sounds confusing to, I think you'd do well at this point to go to Partner Center on your own side, right? Go to the membership screen and click on Solution Partner under those breakdowns. We're looking at business applications. So as you get to this part of the podcast, pause it, go there. And I think if we're looking at that in front of your screen, it'll make a lot more sense than trying to measure what's a 15, what's a 20, what in the world are they talking about?
And just there's two big picture things I like to just set the tone here. One of the reasons why I asked that question is because my own numbers aren't coming over. So like I think Microsoft is having some issues with the reporting. I'm sure it'll get sorted out in short order. You probably just need to put a ticket in with the Partner Center folks and they'll get you sorted out. But like my own net customer adds is I have 0 points, but I have sold more than 0 customers in the last 2 weeks, AJ. So yeah, I have more than 0.
We're also seeing an underrepresentation of that. And to your point, Peter, I think we have specifically been told in one of our calls to open a case with the, I forget the exact name of the team, but basically open a support case. And that is a known issue right now, but that will get resolved. And I think we're not in a hurry. And it seems, Peter, you're also not in an immediate hurry. Is because our benefits kind of rolled over for a year. So we know, there's some time for, again, to use that cake analogy, for the cake to fully bake and not just go too crazy right now in this moment.
Yeah, Microsoft has made it a low stress event. Yes, you need to get it sorted out, but they've given you some runway to sort it out. The other piece I missed, though, before I jumped right into performance, is the classification. So right before the call, AJ and I were talking about it. Like my classification is automatically set to SMB. And it looks like this is an automatic flag based on if you sold 5 or more workloads of over $1,000 or something like that, it'll flag you as enterprise. If you're 4 or fewer, it's SMB. So that seems like to be an automatic classification. So if you go in and you scroll down on the solution partner business application designation area, you'll see classification enterprise / SMB. It'll tell you which one you're slotted for.
Right.
Oh, in fact, there's a little I next to that, which says exactly that. It's if you have 5 or more unique workloads contributing more than $5,000 in revenue for each customer tenant. And just to put a frame of reference on that, $5,000 in revenue, that's definitely an enterprise customer. Like, so if a customer had sales enterprise licenses, let's just say it's $100, it's $95 per user per month. That's a lot of seats of sales enterprise to get to that number. So my average SMB is not going to be there. Yeah.
Go ahead, Jason. What were you saying?
Is that a per month revenue?
Yeah.
So like 20 customer ads, greater than $500 adjusted revenue. That's like greater than 500 per month per customer.
Yeah.
I read this a little bit different. I almost see that as 12 months, right? And so maybe that's a place we need to get some clarification as well. I read that as, Peter, if our workload, if 5 or more unique workloads contribute $5,000 in revenue in a trailing 12-month period, is how I read it.
It specifically says for each customer tenant in both the current month -1, which is last month, and current month -13. So what it's saying is you've had that customer for over a year.
There you go. So I did not read the in both, right? I kind of read that as a between current month -1 and month -13. So
I don't know. It's not that clear though, AJ. So maybe, yeah. Yeah.
Well, presumably they've coded it one way or the other in their calculations, right?
Yeah.
So an interesting point here too is for anybody who remembers the way it was before the change, the classification was not done by SMB versus enterprise at all in the original model of the Cloud Partner Program for Business Applications. It was more by, I think they called it the market, and you were either in the large market, and if you were in the United States or any of the developed markets, you were considered large. And other emerging markets, I think they were called small or whatever the other name was for the other market. And so you had, even if you sold SMB products, but you were located in the U.S., you were in the large market, and all the thresholds that you had to be measured against were significantly higher. Now, by kind of looking at this as SMB versus enterprise, at least if you are, I think as Peter described here, if you're truly focused on SMB, then you're being measured against SMB targets. The real interesting thing is a partner like Peter who sells Dynamics 365 customer engagement, he or another similar partner may want to be measured against enterprise or may want to focus on SMB, and they don't get a chance to opt in. Quite frankly, if you're right near that threshold of, you have exactly five unique workloads contributing $5,000 in revenue, as soon as you're in that above that threshold, now you're going to be measured against enterprise, right? And all of a sudden, you could see your score fall drastically in the metric, as opposed to somebody who has 4,999 in revenue, or you have 4 unique workloads that are significantly above 5,000. So those types of things for partners who are right in that on the cusp of one versus the other, I think they will probably get some heartburn and stress. But for the most part, a partner like us that only does Business Central or truly focuses on the SMB side, I think we would safely remain in the SMB classification for a long time, and that's where we would like to be. And I think then all the goals that we have to hit are going to be quite realistic. And we'll talk about some of those other goals too as we continue.
And just to define, when you talk about workloads, is that the different solution areas like business applications versus security versus modern work? Is that a workload?
So the way I perceive workload is if I'm selling something to a customer that's business related, Business Central related, that entire anything pertaining to that customer's Business Central subscription, that's one workload. If I have another customer that's only doing Azure subscription, Azure resources, that's a workload. So I think where Peter can educate us a little bit more is what happens if I've got a customer that's got Business Central and Dynamics 365 customer engagement. I think those constitute one single workload from the way they're being treated elsewhere. But further to go into this weird line of questioning, what happens if they have Business Central and some Azure stuff? Are they separate workloads? I suppose they should be, because they're measured differently. And this is BizApps, the other is a completely different area of measurement. But Peter, your perspective, what do you think is happening here?
Oh boy, AJ, this is one of those areas that I get bogged down in the terminology myself because it's a little bit confusing. But if I look up eligible workloads, there's a list of them. It includes AI Builder, Business Central, CE Bundle, Commerce, and the list goes on and on. How do they all impact each other? I'm not exactly sure. Like if a customer has both Business Central and CE, is the workload both of those, or is it independent? I don't know.
The documentation does
but I
start
do
to
think
define that. Like I looked up, like you said, there's a list for business apps. And then if you look under Azure areas, it does have a subsection called eligible workloads, and it says all Azure service level 2 services are eligible workloads for the Azure solution area. So maybe
it's just odd though, because like there's some gray areas like with Power Apps and CE, like there's not fine lines between. It's very blurry lines between so for example, they've got customer service and sales as separate workloads, Jason, but that's not really how things work. Like if a customer has sales and service needs, they'll get both sales and service. It's in one tenant, it's one application. Like to me, that's one workload.
Yeah, I see another place here in the
don't know.
documentation where on the Learn site, where it lists common data service and then in parentheses customer engagement. So maybe they are in some ways bundling that all together.
There's an interesting statement here, Jason. That if you look under the, again, for anybody wondering where we are, just a quick indicator, by the way. So originally I invited you to join us on the solution partners page so you could see the details, right? From there, if you click on view details under performance and then click on learn more about partner capability score business applications, it's one of those useful links all the way at the bottom. But anyways, to go back to what I was about to say, there's a section called eligible customers. Under SMB, it says, this is the number of unique workloads rolled up at customer tenant level and contributing to at least. And so it seems maybe this is very specific for our eligible customers and the net customer add metric, but just kind of looking at how they're doing it here, I'd imagine in general, their philosophy might be number of unique workloads. So that could include CE, to your point, customer service, sales, and some of the other things we talked about. But when they're measuring it for the purpose of this calculation, they'll look at it as number of unique workloads rolled up at the customer tenant level. So the combined value of all the unique workloads for that customer's tenant, if that exceeds a certain threshold value, I think that's kind of maybe what they look at. 5,000 for the purpose of SMB, 5 or more unique $5,000+ workloads for the SMB versus enterprise designation. And then further, when we talk about net customer adds, I think how they consider whether it's considered a net customer add or not. Right? I think that's a $500 threshold, which, by the way, if we want to roll into that next part of the conversation, Microsoft's also lowered and made it more realistic for
Actually, AJ, I'm sorry, before we jump on, I just want to, under the view details under performance, I clicked that and there's an area that says customers, little plus sign, I expanded that. Then there's workloads, and I expanded that. I just wanted to clarify something for the folks at home. It says here for customers, is the number of unique workloads rolled up at the customer tenant level and contributing at least $500 revenue in a given month. That's for SMB classification. Under workloads, to your point from before, it says all Dynamics 365 and Power Platform workloads are counted. So it definitely, if the customer has both BC and CE, it seems from what I'm reading, both of those would count.
So I think going back where I wanted to take this quickly too, I know we're running up against time a little bit. The next significant part, the others, I think there's probably only two portions that I'd like to talk about regarding the changes. One of those is how net customer adds are measured. I think in the past model, before this was revised in October, the threshold was just really high for us to have a customer counted as a net new add. And now that's been lowered in the SMB world. It's become a $500 threshold now. When we're talking about, they look at that unique workload rolled up at the customer tenant level. If it contributes at least $500 of revenue in a given month, then that should light up as one new add. And I think Peter and I have both already shared that we're not seeing the right number of customer adds, and I think there's a support case that can be flagged or open for it. So if anybody listening here has that same problem, it's probably not the model as much as just the calculation is not showing up right, and a support case could rectify that. Peter,
This is a huge jump because, so just for the people that sell CE like we do, this is basically now 7.7 licenses of Sales Pro, or about 6 licenses of Sales Enterprise. That's before it was, I think it was like 23.8. And like a lot of our customers are in the 10 to 15 seat range. So like they weren't counting, but now they do. So again, kudos to Microsoft for making this change and valuing those SMB customers.
The other notable change was the skilling area. And I should just mention for anyone listening, I'm not seeing exactly what AJ and Peter see, because I think some of what you're talking about is sort of behind the partner center or whatever it's called now, area. So correct. I'm just sort of hearing that too. I'm looking at more general information, but skilling, there's a whole section where it's a much lower threshold in the SMB range for the number of functional consultants, the number of intermediate and advanced certifications that you have to carry as part of that.
Yeah, so much better.
It was just on
5 and 2. Yeah, I mean, just absolutely more reasonable on the small business side.
I mean, on the enterprise before, it was 20 certified people. Right. Now it's 5 on the regular side of the house, and on the advanced it was 7 and 2, and now it's 2. So yeah, they made a huge they developed a huge understanding of what the typical partner like me looks like. So thanks again to Microsoft for that. That was huge
and pretty straightforward. But important. The one that's not straightforward to me is the third part that I see here, which is the consumption, the monthly consumption value, which I'm sure there's formulas for, and but that has to be a bit challenging because it's harder to, I would guess, harder to keep track of. I understand the intent of it is incentivizing partners to, get more consumption out of their existing customer base, keep them. You mentioned this already, Peter, that this is something you track carefully, but it must be a bit tricky to gauge how Microsoft's actually measuring it.
I have to echo what you just said, and like I had my team and I have had many conversations around this, Jason. We walk away every time scratching our head trying to figure out exactly how it's being scored. And it doesn't help that when we look at our data, nothing shows up, which is obviously not true. We have customers that would fit these profiles, but it's some formula of the customers get scored based on which product that they're using, and that's loosely related to those workloads. Like Business Central is worth a rate of 1,000 MAUs, and Common Data Service, which is where all the CRM stuff is, the customer engagement modules, that's only 40 MAUs. And so like for me, that part kind of makes me uncomfortable to think that a Business Central license is worth 50 times the engagement of a CRM license. I'm sure Microsoft figured these formulas out somehow, but like it just makes it makes me scratch my head about that. But there is a formula there. It's not as clear to me. Maybe AJ has some insights on that.
No, I think this is definitely one of those places where you need to get your calculator and an Excel spreadsheet out, right? Even with the formula being explained. I think one of the interesting things about this, Peter, is where you've mentioned you're not even seeing a score there. I think it's just that there's a little footnote there in the scoring calculation. It says you need to have a minimum of 50,000 MCV last year, so 12 months ago, to qualify. If your MCV last year was below this threshold, you will not even qualify for a calculation. So it's almost to even get in and start showing a score, you have to have achieved some kind of threshold last year.
All right. Hold on, AJ. I'm pulling out my calculator. 50,000 divided by 40 for every CE license. That means I need 1,250 seats of CRM. Well, you know what? That's going to be a problem for me because I don't have that many directly because most of my partners sell the licenses. So yeah, you might be right. That might be why my score is 0 in that category.
We score a fairly low score there still, but all in all, though, I think that even with the last model, they used to call it a MAU, if you remember. I think a monthly average usage or something along those lines. Even that was a little bit harder to calculate. I think it was never we look at that score and makes perfect sense. But if you venture to get your calculator and an Excel spreadsheet out, you kind of see where they're coming from. There is more complexity to that side of the house. I think I'm like both of you. I'm not very comfortable with saying, I know this is where we should be or should not be. But there is, to Microsoft's credit, some documentation. It's just this part is not as easy.
One thing I already said it, but I'm going to say it again, AJ, because it is kind of one of those things that's a major sticking point for me is why is Business Central rated as 1,000 moths and customer engagement is 40, and then you got Power Apps, which is 100. So a Power App, in theory, customer engagement is a first-party Power App. So shouldn't it at least be 100?
I agree. It does seem like CRM is undervalued. I can see why Business Central is valued high.
Oh yeah, me too.
And this is not me trying to be funny or subjective.
No,
I look at it's an ERP system. It's fundamentally what a business is running on, and not every business has a CRM system. But I think every business should have some kind of financial accounting system that ultimately grows into an ERP. So I can see the value there. But I do think Microsoft is significantly undervaluing the contribution of CRM CE, especially given, like you said, the Power Platform, which is very much related to and kind of stems off of the database that that CE has and has had for a long time. Yeah, you look at that and you kind of go like that doesn't just jive and make a lot of sense. I agree there.
Yeah, but either way, I mean, Jason, your point is spot on. Like out of all the metrics, that one is the most opaque to me. And I'm not sure I'm a fan of how much they're valuing or not valuing CRM, but I think generally speaking, Microsoft's made some good strides here, and let's just hope that they keep tweaking this for the satisfaction of all. But I don't know how you want to wrap this up, but for partners that are out there that are seeing scores like mine, which I'm seeing a lot of zeros, but I know I've got sales that would qualify. They are working through that. My own attitude here is I'm just going to have patience and just let the other partners work it out and sweat it out with Microsoft, and hopefully they'll fix the formula. I've got a year because I extended my benefits. So to AJ's point earlier, it's a low stress thing here, but the important thing is that all the partners should listen to the facts here, which is Microsoft cares, they're changing things. And if you don't mind, I'll make a shameless plug for folks to join the IMCP, because a lot of great discussions go on in the IMCP and a lot of feedback gets percolated up to Microsoft with the IMCP.
Yeah, I'll make one comment there too about the IMCP, and then go back to one thing that partners can also individually do. Well, some partners can at least. I think in the past there were a lot more partners that were considered managed partners. So many of those had to fall off that managed partner wagon when the number of PDMs at Microsoft significantly went down about a year and a half ago. So I think in a situation like that, where you're in the wilderness, as it were, of digitally managed partners, having access to a group like IMCP that interfaces with Microsoft, that brings to you, allows you to make sense of the changes that happen all the time. I think that's great. I mean, just being able to be in Seattle, like we did at the board retreat, and being able to hear specifically from the teams that are part of NCE, that are part of the CPP group, that's just the type of access that most partners will not get if you're not a managed partner. So those were phenomenal things. So moving aside from that plug, if you are a tier one or a direct CSP, one of the things you should absolutely look to do is leverage one of your cloud consults. That has helped us a lot in the past when we were trying to understand the MAU, when we were working with the partner contribution model. And again, with this model, a lot of times the questions that we had very specific to our account, I think opening a cloud consult helped. I think if you're an indirect or kind of working through an indirect CSP, you may not have access to a cloud consult directly with Microsoft, but leverage who you're working with. They may be able to schedule one for you, or at least get the answers and get with you, because don't try to make sense of the MCV score yourself if it just looks a little too complex. I will say from personal experience that when we had one of these calls, they explain it down to a T. We can look at that score and they'd say, yes, it's still weird and just oddly complex, but we understand the method behind the madness, right? You don't have to agree with the madness, but you can understand how those scores are calculated.
Yeah, I agree with that too. There's a lot more information buried in the partner portal now, like, the view details. It isn't always clear because of the Microsoft terms and the acronyms that they use. And sometimes the concepts are a little bit murky because, in some ways they become murky because Microsoft is focusing less on tech solutions and more on customer focused solutions, which sometimes are multiple pieces of different tech, right? And so like that, I think that's the right thing to do when we talk about workloads instead of applications, but it does make things a little bit harder to parse when you look at formulas like this.
Well, I think all three of us would really like to hear from anyone who wants to share their questions or their observations on this, and we'll certainly put some contact information in there, and then maybe the three of us could reconnect a few months down the line to sort of compare notes on what we're seeing and what we're observing from the program, because this is a pretty interesting and important area of that's going to really play into the success of the products, right?
Yeah. And we can have questions asked on the MSDW website, correct? I think with blogs, I see that. I can't remember if with podcasts, can people ask questions at the bottom of the podcast?
Yeah, you can put a comment there. You can reach out to us individually. We'll put contact information in the show notes. And I mean, one of the big themes for me is how will people or how will partners figure out how to up that consumption? Is it going to be selling through with like Business Central in Teams? Is it building more Power Apps to connect into these enterprise solutions? I mean, so many questions I have that we'll have to save for next time.
I just want to end here, Jason, by saying thank you for the opportunity to share our thoughts with the audience. I like, AJ's style, and I think he lends definitely a different perspective than I do, but I think both of us speak for a lot of the partners out there. So it's really great to have a forum like the MSDW podcast. So thank you very much.
Oh yeah, anytime.
Yep, Peter, you're the yin to my yang, my friend. I enjoyed this. And Jason, thank you for the platform.
Yeah,
we really appreciate having a platform to voice our thoughts, and I think this is great what you're doing with MSDW.
Absolutely.
This has been another episode of the MSDW podcast. My thanks, as always, to AJ Ansari and Peter Wolf for being here. Check out the show notes for this one. We have a range of links from our coverage on MSDW to Microsoft documentation and blog posts, some references to where you can reach AJ and Peter online, some screenshots of various elements of the MCPP scoring approach, and more. So please do check that out. If you want to get in touch with me, you can reach out by email, jgumpert@msdynamicsworld.com. You can follow all of our updates on LinkedIn and on Twitter. And until next time, this is MS Dynamics World, signing off.